Hey, good afternoon, friends. Today is Sunday, July the 7th, 2024, and the time now is 5:30 p.m. So, the past few days has been very eventful to the point where today, Sunday, July the 7th, it's a very busy week in terms of the informations that are coming out, okay, or informations relating to geopolitics or relating to the trends and the headlines in geopolitics. Now, I want to thank you for becoming a member of the Echoing Voice community or for watching the Echoing Voice. Now, you're watching episode number 6 of the playlist series, Trends and Headlines in Geopolitics. As I said earlier, a couple of seconds ago, there are lots of news and informations that are coming out relating to the various parts of the world or relating to geopolitics, okay, or to our domestic as much as our international relations. For example, so far, there are information coming out relating to the situation in France, the election in France, okay, the parliamentary election in France. And I came across an article that basically stated that the far right did not get as much vote as was being predicted, or the far right wasn't able to get a parliamentary majority in France, okay, in the French parliament. Or it is being stated that so far the vote or the results seem to be about equal, so nobody was able to outperform the other political party. However, the left seems to maintain its coalition, okay? Basically fighting off the far right in France. Now, in international relations, another very significant news is NATO, 75 years old, okay? There are those who will basically argue whether NATO is relevant today or not. I know in the West, particularly among the elite of the Western governments, okay, those in power in the West, I do believe they are going to argue that NATO is relevant and should be maintained, expanded, and improved militarily, okay, to do whatever the Western elites chose to do, to accomplish. That is another significant information in geopolitics. Now, in Asia, we do have the situation in Iran, which I'm going to talk about. And I'm sure that you notice the title of this video or talk or program, okay? Now, the Iranian people have basically elected a new president by the name of Masoud Pezeshkian, okay, or MP. I'm going to brutalize the name because it is difficult for me and I will have to learn it. So far, there are lots of suppositions, allegations, things that appear to be wishful thinking out there, and a couple of articles that I looked at basically are hailing him to be a reformist. Yes, perhaps his positions on domestic issues as well as international issues may not be as radical as other candidates, whether we are talking about those who made the final cut or those who couldn't make the final cut to the election. However, I want to ask, when they are talking about reformist, what does it mean reformist in this tense international world? Are they talking about Masoud Pezeshkian being a reformist in that he wants to reform the relationship between Iran or the West, okay, Iran and the West, or is he a reformist because he wants to reform the domestic situation. Okay, there seems to be a confusion in that, but also I am sensing wishful thinking, whether they are smelling someone who is soft on the West or someone who doesn't have a spine. I don't know. But that seems to be the sentiment that I am feeling, okay, when I read these articles and so on. However, one thing I do believe is that, unlike many countries in our global community or in the global south, Iran is a system. When you look at international politics, okay, in terms of how the Western countries deal with the rest of the world, the global south, and most especially African countries in this case, they deal with them all as an individual, okay? Basically divide and conquer, where they are not able to protect themselves, basically fight for themselves, or come up with deals, okay, or agreements that basically benefit these countries, the people, or the government. In this case, Iran is a different country. Iran is a system. Whether MP as a new incoming president in Iran is a reformist or not, yes, they are hailing him being a former parliamentary member as well as a former doctor. However, Iran is a system, and I do not believe that MP is going to sway from the position or the policy of the former Ebrahim Raisi. Okay? Iran is a system. So I do believe he is going to follow the position of the elite and the position of the former Ebrahim Raisi. I don't foresee any radical change. So I want to repeat that I do not foresee any significant deviation, okay, from the policies, domestic or international policies of the former Ebrahim Raisi on the incoming president. I do not foresee any significant change or significant deviation because Iran, unlike many countries in the global south, is a system. And it is a country or a civilization state that basically does have some form of national self-esteem, cultural self-esteem. That's one. And two, as I said a couple of seconds ago, it is a system, okay, that so far it is isolated from the West, and that they are not going to be swayed from whatever issues, okay, or whatever kitchen sink the West brings at them. Now, a couple of things that is interesting in this case. One is that countries throughout the world, okay, or let me say significant countries in the region, have basically called and congratulate the president-elect of Iran, the Russian president, the Prince of Saudi Arabia, okay, India, and other countries. They've already called Iran and or congratulated the incoming Iranian president, okay, the president-elect, Masoud Pezeshkian. However, something that I find to be much more striking is that the State Department, okay, a spokesman of the State Department or a spokesperson of the State Department basically issued a statement in which the spokesperson basically states that the election in Iran was neither free nor fair. When I read that statement, I was very much not surprised, but one thing I said to myself is that the United States government and officials in the US government, they make things so not only unnecessary, but obvious. At this time, whether you believe it or not, it is not your place to just make a condemnation. You could say that the election was neither free nor fair. What if the vast majority of Iranians say that it is free and fair? And secondly, the articles that I read are stating that many of the people who did not vote the first round basically were inspired to vote this round because they do not want a hardliner to win the presidency, which in this case would lead to a constant or a continuation of tension between Iran and the West, especially the United States. So in this case, are you going to say the election is not free or fair? Or that it is not free or fair because some of the candidates were basically barred from running? Often when the United States government come out with a criticism, I do believe it basically placed the US and the US government in a very chaotic situation, in isolation, especially at a time where lots of things are not going according to the prescription or the liking of the United States. You have what's happening in Ukraine, okay, where Russia appears to be winning. Okay, you have the global South is saying we don't want no part of this, and the global South is refusing to be bullied, if you will. Okay, a term that many are using in international relations. One thing the U.S. government might want to do is to demonstrate or at least project some level of so-called equality, where the rest of the world begin to feel much more comfortable and feel like, okay, these guys are behaving. But US government officials and spokespersons are making statements which do not sit well with the rest of the world. Okay? One of the articles that I read, the author stating that Iran is isolated and could remain isolated even under the new incoming president, okay? And that could basically lead to more problem for Iran. That seems to be a wishful thinking, which I do believe will not work in the favor of the West. Because as long as tension continue to sour between the West and Russia, and the West and countries like China, where even India is saying you are not going to use us against China. Countries like Iran will basically be in a much comfortable position because in this case, Russia will have to support Iran. Okay? Previously, lots of the sanctions that were placed on Iran, I do believe worked because Russia did not have the growing esteem that it is now enjoying, okay, and the recognition and friendship with the rest of the world. And China didn't feel as less comfortable and suspicious of the West as it is feeling right now. You have a NATO that is saying they want to expand, okay, even in Asia, okay, along China's doorstep or along China's border. In this case, as much as China and Russia want a stable Middle East, supporting Iran in response to what the West is doing in a way that they themselves could be secure, it's a reality that we all have to anticipate. So as long as the tension between China and the West and Russia and the West continue to sour, they are not going to just let Iran down. They are going to support Iran. And if the new coming Iranian president, okay, once again, MP or Masoud Pezeshkian, begin to take in or propagate or demonstrate hardlinership, it's going to be a problem for the West. Now, there is a high possibility that Donald Trump could be winning the November election in the United States. Should Donald Trump win the election, and the fact that he is going to come into the presidency again with a very strong stance against countries around the world and against Iran. Okay? The possibility of the Iranian president adopting a hardline position is ripe. We need to anticipate that. As long as Donald Trump comes into the presidency with a hardliner position on Iran, Masoud could be doing the same thing. And he has to do the same thing in order to get a continuous support or legitimacy within the community of the hardliners and the top rulers of Iran or Iranian society. So now I am going to read the description for this program, which is very short, and the description can serve as a conclusion or a summary. The description does have questions and or comment that I want to address individually, and then I am going to end. I'm going to read TAHI Geopolitics, Episode 6. Iran elects a new president, Masoud Pezeshkian. Once again, TAHI Geopolitics, Episode 6. Iran elects a new president, Masoud Pezeshkian. TAHI stands for Trends and Headlines in Geopolitics. Once again, TAHI stands for Trends and Headlines in Geopolitics. I'm going to read. Iran elects Reformist lawmaker Masoud Pezeshkian. On Friday, June 6, Iranians went to the poll in a snap election and elected Masoud Pezeshkian over hardliner Saeed Jalili to replace the former president Ebrahim Raisi. Questions or comments? Number 1. Some hail Masoud Pezeshkian as a reformist, but what does reformist mean in that case? Is he aiming to reform Iran's domestic affairs or relationship with the West? Number 2. How would the election of MP impact Iran's domestic and international situation, and why? Number 3. Will MP follow Raisi's policy of engagement with the Global South? Will he be a hardliner toward Israel? Number 4. How would he impact the current situation in Gaza, and why? Number 5. How will Iran engage with the West under MP, and why? And number 6. Would MP continue to be a hardliner in a world led by U.S. Donald Trump? Why or why not? Now, I am going to respond to these questions individually, and then, as I said, I'm going to end. The first one, some in the West, okay, and it is very much obvious in the articles that I've been reading, are basically hailing or declaring or stating that MP is a reformist, okay? But then the question that I want to ask under that, okay, or in response to that is, what is he a reformist of? And what are they anticipating him reforming? Are they anticipating or wishing that he reform Iran's domestic affair or the relationship between Iran and the West? Also, when they say he is a reformist, based on what they want, are they potentially saying or wishing or hoping that MP basically downgrade or end altogether Iran's nuclear program, which I think that is not going to happen, given what is happening in the Middle East today. I know recently there are those who have been calling for Israel to basically strike Iran, especially when Iran retaliated after Israel bomb the Iranian embassy complex in Damascus, Syria. So many in the West were calling for Israel to basically go all out attacking Iran. Given all that, I don't think MP is going to downgrade or end Iran's nuclear program altogether. And I do think if he does that, he is probably going to be in big trouble with the hardliners at home in Iran. Number two, how would the election of MP impact Iran's domestic and international situation? As I said earlier, Iran is a system. Yes, perhaps there could be some domestic reforms, but I don't think the domestic reform in Iran is going to go as far as having women not wearing their veils and so on. I think the conservatism of Iranian culture and society to a greater extent is going to remain. Now, in terms of how he interacts with the West, perhaps there could be some consensus, but I do believe he is going to follow some of the steps or the policies of Ebrahim Raisi before him. Ebrahim Raisi, despite what he is said to be in the West, has done a lot to cultivate Iranian relationship with the rest of the world, and particularly the global South. And I do believe MP is going to continue that. Number three, will MP follow Raisi's policies of engagement with the global South? So basically that, I already answered a couple of seconds ago. I think that is going to be the case. In terms of him being a hardliner toward Israel, I think there could be a consensus, but as long as the situation in Gaza continues or remains, we could begin to see an adaptation by MP of a hardline policy towards Israel and the West. And that also could be the case if Donald Trump wins the election in November and he comes into the presidency with a hardline position towards the rest of the world, and in this case, towards Iran. Number four, how would he impact the current situation in Gaza? I do believe as long as the situation in Gaza continue, and given the title that Iran has cultivated for itself of being the leader of the so-called resistance in the Middle East, I think Iran will continue under MP to have a hardline or a supportive position to and for the Palestinian people of Gaza, and a hardline relationship with Israel. Number five, how will Iran engage with the West under MP? I do believe it is open to interpretation as long as Donald Trump coming into the presidency in January next year, not being a hardliner toward MP, we could begin to see, or we could see some calm in the relationship between the West and Iran, or between Iran and the United States. Now, number six, that basically answered the previous question. It depends, okay? As long as the US president and the US maintains a calm relationship between the US and Iran, we could begin to see the same coming from MP, because it doesn't make sense to be a hardliner when the US is not trying to be a hardliner. Now, that's the end. Please tell me what you think. Thank you very much for joining the Echoing Voice community, but most importantly, thank you very much for watching the Echoing Voice. Peace.